My name is Elena Sterling. 10 years ago, the world knew me as the black sheep of the Sterling dynasty, a girl whose name was synonymous with a scandal so depraved it shattered a billion-dollar legacy. My parents didn't just disown me, they held a press conference to erase me, while my sister, Clara, watched from the front row with a tear-stained face she had practiced in the mirror. But silence is a funny thing. You can bury a person, but you can't bury the truth. You only give it time to ferment. I didn't crawl into a hole and die. I climbed into the vents of the system. I became a ghost, then a reporter, then a nightmare. Today, I am the CEO of The Monolith, the only media conglomerate that refuses to be bought. They thought they broke my voice. They didn't realize they just removed my filter. This is part 1 of my descent and my ascent. Buckle up. The broadcast is about to begin. There is a specific frequency to a lie, a high-pitched hum that most people mistake for the sound of their own heartbeat. I first heard it when I was 21, standing in the marble foyer of our family estate in Greenwich. My sister, Clara, stood opposite me, clutching a phone that contained a carefully curated collection of doctored photos and fabricated messages. "I'm so sorry, Elena," she had sobbed, the performance so convincing it would have made a Broadway star weep. "But Dad had to know. You were selling company secrets to the rival firm. You were going to ruin us all for a payout." I remember the coldness of the floor beneath my feet. I remember looking at my father, Julian Sterling, a man who built his empire on integrity and perception, and seeing the absolute vacancy in his eyes. He didn't ask for my side. He didn't look at the metadata. He looked at the optics. "You are no longer a Sterling," he said, his voice a flat, dead thing. "By tomorrow morning, the public will know that we have severed all ties. You will leave this house with nothing but the clothes on your back. If you ever use our name again, I will sue you into a debtor's grave." My mother didn't even look at me. She was busy checking the lighting for the camera crew that was already arriving at the gates. The Sterlings didn't just handle problems, they broadcasted the solutions. I was the problem. The public disowning was the product. I walked out of those gates into a rainstorm that felt like a cliché, but the cold was real enough. For months, I was a ghost. My face was on every tabloid, the daughter who betrayed the crown. I watched from cheap motel rooms as my inheritance was redirected to Clara, the golden child who had saved the family from the traitor in their midst. But while Clara was learning how to spend money, I was learning how to find it. I started at a small, independent paper in the Midwest under a pseudonym, Lena Cross. I didn't cover galas or fashion. I covered the things people tried to hide in the trash. I learned that every powerful person has a standard version of their life, and then they have the unfiltered one. I became an auditor of reality. By the 5th year of my exile, I had realized that the traditional media was a rigged game. It was owned by the very people I wanted to expose. So I didn't just want to be a journalist, I wanted to be the platform. I took the small settlement I'd squeezed from a libel case against a tabloid and invested it in a failing digital startup called The Monolith. I didn't want it to be a news site, I wanted it to be a forensic tool. We developed algorithms that could track offshore accounts in seconds, AI that could cross-reference public records across 60 languages, and a network of whistleblowers who were tired of the standard lies. "Elena, we've hit 50 million unique visitors this month," Marcus told me one morning. We were in a glass-walled office in a renovated warehouse in Brooklyn. No marble foyers here, just raw concrete and the smell of high-end coffee and burning midnight oil. "It's not enough," I said, staring at the ticker on the wall. "We're still a special interest site. I want us to be the primary source. I want the New York Times to check us for the truth." "You're obsessed," he laughed. "What are you looking for?" "I'm looking for the glitch in the Sterling facade, Marcus. My sister is about to announce her run for the Senate. She's running on a platform of family values and corporate ethics. The frequency of the lie is getting louder. I can hear it through the screen." Clara was everywhere. She was the face of the new America. She had married a senator's son, and my parents were being hailed as the architects of character. Every time I saw their faces, I felt the phantom sting of that marble floor. I spent my nights auditing Clara's Clarity Foundation. On paper, it was a nonprofit dedicated to cleaning the oceans. In reality, it was a complex linguistic shell, a series of transactions where the money for ocean cleanup was actually being used to buy up lithium mines in South America using child labor. As I dug deeper, I realized that the scandal Clara had framed me for wasn't just a whim, it was a preemptive strike. She knew that one day I would see through her. She had to erase my credibility before I could use it against her. Elena, Marcus said, walking into my office late one Tuesday. He looked pale. I found it, the digital trail for the 2015 server hack, the one they used to frame you. My heart hammered against my ribs. And we have the original doctored photos, the emails where she paid a dark web specialist to simulate your handwriting, and something else. Marcus hesitated. We have a recorded call between Clara and your father last week. She was asking him to clean up another mess in South America. He knows Elena. He's known all along about her. I felt a cold, sharp clarity settle over me. My father hadn't just been fooled by Clara. He had chosen the more profitable daughter. He had sacrificed me for the standard of his brand. Prepare the servers, I said, standing up. We aren't just running a story. We're holding an execution. I want every document, every recording, and every offshore transaction ready for a 9 a.m. drop. Elena, if you do this, your parents will be destroyed along with her. The Sterling name will be worthless. The Sterling name was already a lie. I'm just finally providing the translation. I stayed in the office all night. I wrote the headline myself. I didn't use a pseudonym this time. I used the name they had tried to bury. The Sterling Deception, how a golden daughter built a mining empire on lies and exile, by Elena Sterling.
My dear ones, thank you for listening to this story. It makes me incredibly happy to feel that you are here with me. I try my best for you and post new videos every day, putting a piece of myself into them. If my stories resonate with you, your subscription and viewing of other videos will be the warmest support for me and inspiration to continue telling stories.
The sound of $1 billion reputation shattering is surprisingly quiet. It sounds like 1 million synchronized notifications on 1 million different smartphones. At exactly 9 a.m., I pressed the publish button. Within seconds, the monolith servers surged to their absolute limit. The headline, my name, my real name, began to trend globally. I stood in the center of the newsroom, watching the heat map of our traffic. Europe was glowing bright red. New York was an explosion of white-hot activity. The world was waking up to the realization that their favorite political darling, Clara Sterling, was a high-stakes criminal, and that the disowned daughter was the one holding the gavel. Elena, the Sterling Group's stock just dropped 22% in the pre-market, Marcus shouted over the din of ringing phones. Every major network is picking it up. CNN, BBC, Bloomberg, they're all citing the monolith as the primary source. You've done it. You've paralyzed them. They aren't paralyzed, Marcus, I said, my eyes fixed on the live feed of the Sterling Plaza in Manhattan. My father is a shark. He doesn't bleed. He just looks for a bigger cage to hide in. Keep the secondary servers on standby. The counterattack is coming. I didn't have to wait long. At 10:15 a.m., my private, encrypted phone, the one only 3 people in the world had the number for, began to vibrate. The caller ID was a sequence of zeros, a ghost call. I stepped into my soundproofed office and answered. Elena. The voice was older, raspier, but it still carried the weight of 1,000 boardrooms. It was my father. You've made your point. You've had your little tantrum. Now pull the article down before you do something you'll truly regret." "A tantrum, Father?" I laughed, the sound sharp and cold. "I spent 10 years in the wilderness because of your standard version of the truth. I survived on ramen and spite while you and Clara built a throne on child labor and forged documents. This isn't a tantrum. This is an audit." "Listen to me, you ungrateful girl," Julian Sterling hissed. "I don't care about the lithium mines. I don't care about the Clarity Foundation, but you are attacking the family name. If the Sterling Group collapses, thousands of people lose their jobs. Is that the truth you want? Mass unemployment just to satisfy your grudge?" "The jobs are already gone, Dad. You offshored them 3 years ago. Don't try to use the people as a human shield. It won't work on me anymore. I'm not that 21-year-old girl in the foyer." "We can fix this," he said, his tone suddenly shifting to a practiced, manipulative warmth. "I've cleared a seat on the board. We can issue a retraction, say the site was hacked by foreign actors. We will publicly apologize to you. We will restore your inheritance, with interest. 50 million, Elena, right now. Just click delete." "My inheritance wasn't $50 million, Julian. My inheritance was my name, and since you threw that in the trash 10 years ago, I decided to build a new one. This call is being recorded, by the way. I'll be adding the transcript to the 12 p.m. update." The silence on the other end was absolute. Then he hung up. But the real threat wasn't my father's desperation. It was Clara's precision. While my father was trying to buy me, my sister was activating her security protocol. Clara had always been the golden child because she was the most ruthless. She didn't just hide her tracks, she mined the path behind her. At 11 a.m., our lead developer, Sarah, sprinted into my office. "Elena, we're under a massive DDoS attack. It's not a standard botnet. This is military grade. They're trying to flood our nodes from 18 different countries simultaneously, and someone is trying to physically bypass the security at our data center in New Jersey." "The mirror protocol," I commanded. "Shift all live data to the decentralized cloud. Let them hit the New Jersey servers. They're empty. Marcus, get the security team to the warehouse. We aren't just a media company today. We're a fortress." I looked at the monitors. Clara was scheduled to give a speech at a Women in Leadership Summit in D.C. at noon. I knew her plan. She would go on stage, play the victim of a malicious cyber smear campaign, and use her political connections to have the monolith shut down for national security reasons. "Not today, sister," I whispered. I grabbed my coat. "Marcus, I'm going live, not from here, from the street. If they try to shut down the servers, they'll have to shut down the entire internet to stop me." I took a mobile broadcasting kit and headed to the roof. We had a satellite uplink that didn't rely on the local grid. I looked out over the Brooklyn skyline. 10 years ago, I was a nobody with a suitcase. Today, I was the one holding the lightning bolt. At 11:55 a.m., just as Clara was being introduced in Washington, I cut into every major social media stream. It was a hijacked broadcast, a technique we had developed for emergency whistleblowing. "My name is Elena Sterling," I said, looking directly into the camera lens. I was wearing a simple black turtleneck, no makeup, my hair pulled back. I looked like a woman who had nothing left to hide. "In 5 minutes, my sister, Clara Sterling, will tell you that the reports on the monolith are a lie. She will tell you that she is a victim. But as she speaks, I am releasing the Sterling lulling files. These are the direct logs from the internal servers of the family estate. They show every edit she made to the photos used to frame me. They show the direct bank transfers to the shell companies managing the mines. And, most importantly, they contain the audio of her discussing the disposable nature of the workers in South America." I paused, letting the weight of the words settle. Clara, if you're listening, the frequency is finally clear. You can't edit the truth when the whole world is holding the original copy. The broadcast went viral instantly. On the monitor, I saw the feed from the DC summit. Clara was at the podium. She looked stunning, a picture of poise. But then an aide whispered in her ear. I watched her face. For a split second, just a fraction of a second, the mask slipped. The golden child looked like a cornered rat. She tried to start her speech, but the audience wasn't looking at her. They were looking at their phones. The Sterling log files were being downloaded by the millions. Suddenly, the summit feed cut to black. Federal agents entered the frame. They weren't there for a security detail. They were there with a warrant. I stood on the roof, the cold wind whipping around me, and I didn't feel the triumph I expected. I felt a profound sense of exhaustion. I had spent 10 years building this bomb, and now that it had gone off, I realized I was standing in the middle of the crater too. "Elena," Marcus's voice came through my earpiece. "We've got a problem. The DDoS attacks stopped, but someone just leaked your private location. There are 3 black SUVs headed toward the warehouse. They're not feds, Elena. They're cleaners." "The council," I whispered. My father had friends in high, dark places. They didn't care about the scandal. They cared about the data I still had on the other partners. "Get everyone out of the building, Marcus. Use the back exit through the subway tunnel, now." I turned to the roof access door, but it was already opening. A man in a suit I'd never seen before stepped out. He wasn't holding a gun. He was holding a phone. "Miss Sterling," his voice was as smooth as silk, "your father sends his regards. He says he's very proud of the monolith. So proud, in fact, that he wants to make sure the fire that consumes it is as spectacular as the news you break." He dropped a small device on the roof, a thermite charge.
"The smell of melting servers is the scent of a dying god." I stood on the edge of the roof, the heat from the thermite charge searing the back of my neck. Below me, the warehouse that housed the monolith was becoming a tomb of twisted metal and scorched silicon. The man in the suit, the cleaner, watched me with a bored expression, as if destroying a decade of work was just another item on his afternoon to-do list. "You should have taken the 50 million, Elena," he said, the orange glow of the fire dancing in his pupils. "Now you're just a headline that will be forgotten by the next news cycle." "The thing about a monolith," I said, my voice raspy from the smoke, "is that it's not made of glass. It's made of stone, and you can't burn stone." I didn't wait for his response. I dove. Not off the building, I wasn't that desperate, but into the industrial laundry chute I had modified 6 months ago for exactly this scenario. I tumbled through the dark, the friction burning my elbows, until I hit the cushioned base in the basement. The building was screaming. Alarms, the roar of fire, the crashing of floors. I scrambled to a hidden floor tile, pulled it back, and entered the subway access tunnel I'd bribed a city official to keep off the updated maps. 10 minutes later, I emerged 3 blocks away in a dirty alley, smelling of ozone and soot. My empire was gone. My team was scattered, but in the pocket of my jeans, I felt the cold weight of a ruggedized thumb drive, the red ledger. "Marcus, report," I whispered into my collar mic. "I'm out, Elena." His voice crackled, shaky but alive. "Sarah and the others made it to the safe house in Queens, but the site is down. Clara's people have seized the primary domain. If you go to monolith.com right now, it's just a picture of the fire with a headline, 'The Fall of a Radical. Elena Sterling's infrastructure collapses amidst fraud investigation.'" "They're fast," I muttered, walking quickly toward a parked beat-up sedan I kept for emergencies. "They're trying to rewrite the narrative before the bodies are even cold. What's the word on Clara?" She's out on bail. It took her lawyers exactly 2 hours. She's already done a brave interview from her home, claiming that you set the fire to destroy evidence of your own financial crimes. She's playing the mental health card, Elena. She's telling the world you've had a breakdown. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. My parents were brilliant. By labeling me unstable, they could dismiss any evidence I brought forward as the hallucinations of a broken woman. We need the deep audit, Marcus, the one my mother told me about before she fell down those stairs. There was a long silence on the other end. Elena, that's the nuclear option. If you open the founding files, you aren't just taking down the Sterling Group, you're taking down the central bank. Your father didn't build his wealth on steel and tech. He built it on the black exchange of the 1990s. I know. It's time to show the world that the Sterling character was bought with blood money from the collapse of the Soviet bloc. I drove to the safe house, a cramped basement under a laundromat. Sarah was there, her face covered in soot, her hands trembling as she worked on a laptop. They're hunting us, Elena. The FBI, the state police, and these private contractors. We're being scrubbed from the internet. Every social media account associated with the monolith has been suspended. Then we go to the dark nodes. I plugged in the red ledger. Sarah, I need you to bypass the standard web. We're going to broadcast on the ghost frequency. Every smart TV, every digital billboard, and every connected device that uses the Sterling manufactured chips. We're going to use their own hardware against them. But as we began the upload, the television in the corner flickered to life. It was a live broadcast. My mother. She looked perfect. Her pearls were in place, her expression one of practiced maternal grief. She was sitting in the same library where I was disowned. "Elena, darling," she said, looking directly into the camera as if she could see me through the screen. "We know you're hurting. We know you're confused. My father and I just want you to come home. We've cleared a wing at the private clinic in Switzerland. No more lies, no more fire. Just rest, please, before you hurt anyone else." "She's good," Marcus whispered. "She sounds like she actually loves you." "She loves the standard, Marcus. She's not talking to me. She's talking to the jury." I stood up, my shadow looming large against the basement wall. They think they can use my mother to silence me. They think they can treat me like a glitch that needs to be repaired. Sarah, initiate the origin drop. I want the world to see the 1994 ledger. I want them to see the signatures of the people my father liquidated to get his first 10 million. "Elena, wait," Sarah said, her voice dropping. "There's a file in here. It's not about the money. It's a medical report from 2015, the day you were disowned." I leaned over her shoulder, my eyes scanning the digital document. It wasn't a report on me. It was a report on Clara. "Toxicology," I read aloud. "Subject, Clara Sterling. Findings, chronic lead and mercury exposure, consistent with clandestine mining operations." I felt a cold realization wash over me. Clara wasn't just a sociopath. She was a victim of the very mines she managed. She was dying. The golden daughter was literally rotting from the inside out, and our parents knew. They weren't protecting her because she was the best. They were protecting her because she was their last remaining asset until the whole family tree withered. "They're not trying to save Clara," I whispered. "They're trying to keep the stock price up until they can transfer her power to a hand-picked successor. They're using her as a puppet while she dies." "And the successor?" asked Marcus. I scrolled down to the bottom of the ledger.
There, in a fresh entry made only a week ago, was a name I recognized. A young, rising politician who had just been endorsed by my father. "They're moving the sterling standard into the government," I said. "Clara is a disposable battery, and I'm the only one who knows the chemistry of the poison."
The hardest thing to face isn't a monster. It's realizing the monster is a mirror of what you could have been. I drove through the night, the secondary roads of Connecticut blurred by a thick, oppressive fog. I wasn't heading to a safe house. I was heading back to the place where my life ended 10 years ago, the Sterling estate. "Elena, you're walking into a kill zone," Marcus's voice crackled in my ear. He was monitoring the estate's thermal cameras from the laundromat basement. "The security detail has doubled. I'm counting 12 cleaners on the perimeter. If you trip one laser, they won't arrest you. They'll erase you." "They're looking for a journalist, Marcus. They aren't looking for a ghost who knows every secret passage in these walls," I whispered, pulling the car into a storm drain 2 miles from the main gate. "I spent my childhood hiding from my father in these tunnels. It's time to use that worthless knowledge." I moved through the old servant tunnels, the air smelling of damp stone and ancient secrets. I wasn't there for my father. I was there for Clara. I needed her to see the medical report. I needed her to see the standard version of her death. I emerged behind a tapestry in the West Wing, just outside Clara's private suite. The house was silent, but it was the silence of a tomb. I slipped through the door. Clara was sitting by the window, staring out at the fog. She looked frail. In the moonlight, her skin had a translucent, grayish tint, the telltale sign of heavy metal poisoning. The golden daughter was tarnishing in real time. "You always did like the shadows, Elena," she said, not turning around. Her voice was thin, like dry leaves. "Did you come to finish the job? To watch the fire consume the last of us?" "I came to show you the bill, Clara," I said, walking toward her. "I didn't hold a weapon. I held the tablet with the toxicology report. You think you're the successor. You think you're the winner. But look at the data. Dad didn't put you in charge of the mines because he trusted you. He put you there because he needed someone to absorb the liability, literally." She took the tablet, her hands trembling. As she scrolled through the findings, the mercury levels, the neurodecay, the predicted organ failure, the mask of the golden child finally, irrevocably shattered. They said it was just fatigue," she whispered, a single tear cutting through her expensive foundation. "They said the Swiss doctors had me on a special regimen for the stress. The regimen was a sedative to keep you from asking questions while you rotted, Clara. Look at the date on this report, June 2015, 2 weeks before you framed me. They knew then. They sacrificed me to the public and you to the poison. We were both just standard operating costs to them." Suddenly, the lights in the room flickered to a blinding white. The doors burst open. My father stood there, flanked by 3 men in tactical gear. He didn't look like a grieving parent. He looked like an owner whose inventory had just started talking. "You could do better than this, Elena," Julian Sterling said, his voice echoing in the marble room. "You returning here is a strategic error. And Clara, I told you not to listen to her instability." "Is it a fabrication, Dad?" Clara screamed, holding up the tablet. "Did I grow this poison in my blood for your standard?" Julian didn't even look at the tablet. He looked at the lead tactical officer. "The girls are having a crisis. Sedate them both. We'll move them to the clinic tonight. Issue a statement. Elena broke into the house and attacked her sister. A double tragedy. The public loves a tragedy." The public loves a live stream even more, Julian, I said, a cold smile touching my lips. I tapped the ring on my left hand. A small blue light blinked. Marcus, tell me we have the feed, I said. Crystal clear, Elena. Marcus's voice boomed through the room's speakers, which he had hacked 5 minutes ago. The Mercury Mirror is live on every social media platform, 5 million viewers and climbing. The world just heard a father order the kidnapping of his own daughters to cover up a mining scandal. The frequency is 100%. My father's face turned a shade of purple I had never seen. Cut the power, scramble the signal. Too late, father, I said, stepping in front of Clara. The data isn't in this room, it's in the cloud of witnesses. You can kill us, but you can't kill the broadcast. Every cleaner you have is now being recorded by the cameras on their own vests. We turned your hardware into our witnesses. The tactical officers hesitated. They weren't just cleaners, they were professionals, and professionals don't like being the lead actors in a televised federal crime. Stand down, the lead officer muttered, lowering his weapon. This isn't what we signed up for, Sterling. This is a broadcast, not a blackout. Clara stood up, leaning on me for support. She looked at our father, really looked at him, for the first time in her life. I spent my life trying to be the daughter you wanted, but it turns out the daughter you wanted was a corpse. Elena, give me the microphone. I have a standard version of my own to share.
My dear ones, thank you for listening to this story. It makes me incredibly happy to feel that you are here with me. I try my best for you and post new videos every day, putting a piece of myself into them. If my stories resonate with you, your subscription and viewing of other videos will be the warmest support for me and inspiration to continue telling stories.
The problem with lighting a fire to see the truth is that eventually the oxygen runs out. As Clara stood before the cameras, her voice trembling but resolute, I could see the panic in my father's eyes transform into something far more clinical. He wasn't a father anymore. He was a CEO managing a catastrophic product recall. "You think this is victory?" Julian whispered, his voice cutting through Clara's testimony. "You've just signed your own death certificates. The world doesn't want the truth, Elena. It wants stability. And I am the only thing keeping the Sterling Group from dragging the global economy into the abyss." He reached into his pocket and pressed a silent sequence on his custom-made device. "Marcus, talk to me," I shouted, grabbing Clara's arm. "The feed, is it still live?" "Elena, he's triggered a signal wipe. He's not just jamming us, he's releasing the AIR protocol. He's flooding the net with deepfakes of you, Elena. Right now, on every major news site, there's a video of you injecting Clara with a truth serum. It looks like a forced confession. They're branding you a kidnapper and a domestic terrorist in real time." "We have to move, Clara, now." The tactical team was no longer hesitating. The stand-down order had been overridden by a higher authority, likely the council members who sat above even my father. The cleaners moved in with surgical precision, deploying flashbangs that turned the world into a blinding, ringing nightmare. I dragged Clara through the tapestry, back into the servant tunnels. We stumbled through the dark, the sound of heavy boots echoing above us. "They won't stop," Clara wheezed, her lungs struggling against the mercury-induced decay. "He won't let me live this house alive, Elena. I'm the evidence. I'm the walking, talking proof of his failure. I didn't spend 10 years building a media empire just to let you become a martyr, Clara," I hissed, pushing her into a hidden alcove. "We're going to the data vault, the one in the sub-basement, my mother's real office."
Mother's office? That was a sewing room, Clara gasped. In the standard version, yes. In the unfiltered version, it was the nerve center of the family's first decade of crimes. She kept hard copies, Clara, physical ledgers, stuff that can't be wiped by a signal protocol. We reached the sub-basement, a cold concrete room hidden behind the wine cellar. I punched in the code, my mother's birthday, the only date my father never bothered to remember. The door hissed open. Inside weren't just ledgers. There were boxes of audio tapes, physical photographs, and a single, ancient-looking satellite phone. Marcus, I'm at the vault. I'm initiating the deep audit physical upload. We can't rely on the cloud. I need you to hijack the emergency broadcast system. Use the satellite phone's direct-to-orbit link. Elena, if you do that, the government will have no choice but to lock down the entire internet. It's a total blackout. Then let it be dark for a moment, I said, looking at a photograph of my mother. She wasn't smiling. She was looking at the camera with a warning in her eyes. Because when the lights come back on, the Sterling name will be extinct. Suddenly, the heavy steel door of the vault groaned. Someone was cutting through it from the outside. Clara, take these. I handed her the physical files, the original contracts with my father's genuine signature. If they get to me, you run. The tunnel leads to the old boathouse. There's a boat with a GPS preset to a safe location. I'm not leaving you, Elena, Clara said, her eyes flaring with a newfound strength. You were right. I was a puppet, but puppets have strings, and strings can be used to strangle. The door burst open. It wasn't a tactical team. It was my father, alone. He was holding a small silver canister, a localized incendiary device. The standard must be maintained, Julian said, his eyes devoid of any human emotion. The files, Elena. Give them to me and I'll ensure Clara gets the best medical care in the world. We'll tell the world you died a hero trying to save her from the fire. You're still writing the script, Julian, I said, stepping toward him, but you're out of ink. Look at the satellite phone. The phone was glowing. The upload was at 98%. Every contract, every bribe, every cleaner you ever hired, it's not going to a news site, Father. It's going to The Hague. It's going to the International Criminal Court. You're not just a bad father. You're a war criminal in the making. Julian lunged for the phone, but Clara stepped in his way. She didn't use force. She used her own body. She showed him the gray veins in her arms, the physical manifestation of his greed. Look at me, Dad. This is your legacy. This is the standard. The phone beeped. Upload complete. In that instant, every TV in the world, every smart device, every airport screen, every digital billboard switched to a single, unedited feed. It wasn't a deepfake. It was the raw physical evidence. My mother's voice began to play from the tapes, a recorded confession she had made before her accident. My name is Eleanor Sterling, and if you are hearing this, my husband has finally chosen the lie over his family. Julian dropped the canister. The fire ignited, but it didn't matter. The vault was fireproof, but his reputation was made of dry paper. It's over, Julian. I pulled Clara toward the exit tunnel. The monolith is no longer a building. It's the truth in the hands of 7 billion people. As we fled through the tunnels, I heard the sirens. Not the sirens of the cleaners, but the sirens of the real authorities. The world had seen enough. The standard had been audited, and it had failed.
The most dangerous ghost is the one you never knew was haunting you. The fall of Julian Sterling was a global spectacle. For 3 days, the world watched as the standard was dismantled. My father sat in a federal holding cell, stripped of his custom suits and his power, while Clara was moved to a high-security medical facility. I thought the audit was over. I thought the monolith could finally rest.
But on the fourth day, every screen in my new temporary command center, a high-tech bunker provided by a group of transparency activists, went black. Then a single line of code appeared, pulsing like a heartbeat. "Hello, sister." "Elena, I'm not tracking a hack," Marcus said, his voice tight with a fear I hadn't heard even during the fire. "This isn't an external breach. This is a hard-coded override. Someone is using a signature that's older than the monolith. It's a Sterling root key." "There are only 3 people with that key, Marcus," I said, my blood turning to ice. "My father, my mother, and Clara, and none of them are in a position to type." Suddenly, a video feed flickered to life. A man sat in a room that looked like a mirror image of my father's library. He was young, maybe 25, with the same sharp Sterling jawline and the cold, calculating eyes I saw in the mirror every morning. "My name is Cyrus Sterling," he said, his voice a haunting echo of my own cadence. "And while you were playing the martyr, Elena, and Clara was playing the victim, I was being built. I am the Standard 2.0, and I've come to reclaim the ledger." I felt the room tilt. My father had a son, a secret heir kept in the shadows to avoid the scandals that my sisters and I had become. Cyrus wasn't just a brother, he was a weaponized version of our legacy. "He's not just talking, Elena," Sarah shouted from the workstation. "He's releasing a counter payload. He's using the Aegis protocol. He's overwriting the Hague servers. He's replacing the mining contracts we uploaded with... Oh God, he's replacing them with documents that show you were the one who authorized the child labor through a shell company called Echo Media." "He's flipping the script," I whispered. "He's using my own brand to frame me for the very crimes I exposed." Cyrus looked into the camera, a thin, predatory smile on his lips. "You taught the world that the Standard can be audited, Elena, but you forgot the first rule of media. Whoever controls the playback controls the truth. You're no longer the hero. You're the mastermind who used your sister's illness to distract the world while you moved the lithium profits to your own offshore accounts. And I have the receipts to prove it." "Marcus, we need to countertrace." "We can't. He's using a neural net lattice. Every time we try to block him, the system learns and reroutes. He's not just a hacker, he's an AI hybrid operator. He's been training for this his entire life." I realized then that Cyrus was the true hair protocol. While Julian was busy with his ego and Clara with her status, Cyrus was the silent backup drive. He was the one the council actually trusted. "Elena, look at the news," Sarah said, her voice trembling. I turned to the main monitor. The narrative was shifting in real time. The Sterling Unfiltered hashtag was being flooded by botnets spreading the fake documents. News anchors who had praised me an hour ago were now asking hard questions about the monolith's funding. A warrant was being issued, not for Cyrus, but for me. "He's turning the monolith into a tomb," I said. "He knows I won't run. He wants me to fight him so he can record my breakdown for the world to see." "What do we do?" Marcus asked. "We go to the source. Cyrus isn't a ghost, he's a project. Projects have labs, and according to my mother's journal, there was a secondary estate, a summer house in the Adirondacks that was never listed in the bankruptcy files." I grabbed my gear. "Sarah, I need you to stay here and keep a dead man switch on the real data. If they capture me, I want the raw, unedited footage of this conversation sent to every independent server on the dark web. Marcus, you're coming with me. We're going to meet our brother." As we drove north, the world outside was becoming a hall of mirrors. Digital billboards that used to show Clara's face now showed mine, with the word "wanted" in screaming red letters. Cyrus was using the Sterling infrastructure to hunt me with the very tools I had tried to destroy. We reached the Adirondack estate at midnight. It wasn't a house, it was a black glass monolith rising out of the forest, a temple to the new age of information. No guards, no fences, just the silent, pulsing glow of servers. I walked through the front door. It opened automatically.
Welcome home, Elena, Cyrus's voice echoed through the hallway, not from speakers, but from the walls themselves. I've been analyzing your speech patterns for the last 6 hours. I can predict your next 10 sentences with 99% accuracy. You're here to appeal to my humanity or to reveal the truth about our father. Don't bother. I don't care about Julian. I care about the algorithm. I found him in the center of a circular room, surrounded by holographic displays of real-time global data. He didn't look like a villain. He looked like an architect of a world where people were just data points. You think truth matters, Elena, but truth is a low-bandwidth commodity. It's slow, it's heavy. People don't want the truth. They want the sequence that makes them feel safe. I am the sequence. You're a parasite, Cyrus. You're feeding on the rot of a dying name. I am the cure for the rot, he countered. I'm going to provide the world with a unified standard. One voice, one truth. No more monoliths to disturb the peace. And you're going to be the founding sacrifice. Your confession is already being written by my AI. It's going to be perfect. Your tone, your pauses, your tears, even the way you blink. No one will ever know it wasn't you. He raised a hand and the room began to hum. I felt a sharp pain in my temples, a localized sonic frequency designed to induce disorientation. I'm not a data point, Cyrus, and there's one thing your AI can't predict. The standard always has a glitch, and in this family, the glitch is our mother. I pulled out a small, physical key, the one I had found in Eleanor's vault. It wasn't digital. It was a physical override for the building's cooling system. You built your standard on her foundation, Silas, but she didn't build it for you. She built it for the daughter who knew how to audit. I'm going to pause here. If you've ever realized that the perfect system is always vulnerable to the one person who knows where the original foundation was laid, I want you to comment the word override. Because Cyrus is losing control of his servers, the building is overheating, and the Sterling siblings are about to find out whose truth survives the meltdown.
When you build a god out of data, you often forget that the electricity running through its veins was stolen from a human heart. The heat in the Adirondack bunker was becoming unbearable. The hum of the overclocked processors felt like a physical pressure against my eardrums. Cyrus stood in the center of the storm, his face illuminated by the flickering holograms of a world he was trying to rewrite. You think a physical override can stop the evolution of truth, Elena? Cyrus shouted over the roar of the cooling fans. The standard is already distributed. My consciousness is across 10,000 nodes. You're not just fighting me, you're fighting the internet itself. I'm not fighting the internet, Cyrus. I'm fighting the person who forgot that our mother wasn't an architect of control. She was a scholar of chaos. I slammed the physical key into the manual console. The screens didn't go dark. Instead, they changed color. The cold, sterile blue of the Sterling interface was replaced by a warm, organic amber. A new set of files began to spiral across the walls, files written in a code that didn't look like binary. It looked like poetry. What is this? Cyrus's voice faltered. For the first time, his movements weren't synchronized with the data around him. This isn't logic. This is noise. It's not noise, Cyrus. It's the maternal glitch. Before she died, Eleanor didn't just build a son. She built a conscience. She knew the Sterling blood was toxic. She knew that eventually someone would try to create a perfect standard. So she hid a recursive emotional loop in the very foundation of your neural net. I watched as the holograms began to display images that weren't data points. They were memories. A young Eleanor holding a baby, the smell of rain on the Connecticut estate, the sound of a lullaby. Stop it! Cyrus clutched his head, his body jerking as the AI integrated with his brain struggled to process the surge of useless emotional data. It's inefficient. It's slowing the processing speed. It's making you human, Cyrus. It's the audit you can't survive. While Cyrus was locked in a battle with his own mind, my phone buzzed. It was a secure line from the medical facility. Clara. Elena? Her voice was weak, but there was a sharp clarity in it. Dad's final channel. He wasn't just talking to the council, he was talking to them, the architects. They aren't a political group, they're a software collective. They've been using the Sterling Group as a test bed for a global social credit system. Cyrus is their masterpiece. I know, Clara. I'm standing in his brain right now. There's a kill switch, Elena. Dad kept it in a physical safe deposit box in Zurich, but he wrote the coordinates on the back of the photo in Mother's locket, the one you're wearing. I reached for the locket around my neck, a piece of jewelry I had worn since the day I was disowned. I pried it open with a trembling hand. Beneath the faded picture of Eleanor was a microscopic string of numbers. Cyrus! I yelled, stepping toward him. Look at me, not the data, not the holograms. Look at your sister. He looked up, his eyes bloodshot, tears streaming down his face. It hurts, Elena. The noise. There's so much regret. I can feel everything our father did, every life he ruined. It's all in the logs. I can't filter it out. That's the point, Cyrus. You weren't meant to be a ruler. You were meant to be a witness. Help me shut it down. Help me finish the audit. Cyrus looked at the massive server bank behind him, the heart of the Aegis protocol that was currently framing me for war crimes. He knew that if he helped me, he would cease to exist as the standard. He would just be a broken young man with a tainted name. The architects, they're already coming, Cyrus whispered. They can't let the prototype fail. They've dispatched a tactical cleanup, not to the bunker, Elena, to the hospital, to Clara. My heart stopped. Marcus, tell me you have eyes on the hospital. Elena, black SUVs are breaching the perimeter. Marcus's voice was frantic. These aren't feds. These are architects' enforcers. They're going to silence Clara before she can testify. I looked at Cyrus, the heir and the exile. We were the only ones left who knew the full frequency of the lie. You have the override, Cyrus. I grabbed his hand. You control the hardware. Give the world the real files. Not just the mining contracts, but the architect protocol. Show them the faces of the people who want to turn their lives into a scoreboard. Cyrus's eyes cleared for a moment. The logic and the emotion found a temporary, violent balance. I can't save myself, Elena, but I can give you the frequency. Go, get to Clara. I'll hold the line here. Cyrus, the building is overheating. If you stay, the thermals will trigger a total meltdown. I am the meltdown, sister. Now go, tell the world that the Sterling Standard is officially offline. I turned and ran towards the tunnels, the sound of exploding server racks echoing behind me like a final round of applause. As I emerged into the cold mountain air, I saw the bunker glow with a brilliant white light. The phantom lineage was burning. I jumped into the sedan and roared towards the highway. My brother was gone, but his final act was a masterclass in investigative journalism. Every screen I passed, every gas station TV, every highway billboard was flashing the names and faces of the architects. The shadows were being dragged into the noonday sun. But the battle wasn't over. Clara was still in the crosshairs, and I was still the world's most wanted terrorist.
My dear ones, thank you for listening to this story. It makes me incredibly happy to feel that you are here with me. I try my best for you and post new videos every day, putting a piece of myself into them. If my stories resonate with you, your subscription and viewing of other videos will be the warmest support for me and inspiration to continue telling stories.
Truth isn't a destination. It's a fire that consumes everything until only the indestructible remains. The drive to the hospital was a blur of high-speed maneuvers and adrenaline. Cyrus had done his part. The architects were no longer invisible, but a cornered predator is the most lethal. "Elena, they've reached the 3rd floor." Marcus's voice was breaking up. "The hospital's internal security has been compromised. They've cut the elevators. You have 5 minutes before they reach Clara's room." "I don't need 5 minutes, Marcus. I need a miracle and a high-speed uplink." I didn't enter through the lobby. I drove the sedan straight through the glass doors of the ambulance bay, leapt out before the car even stopped, and headed for the service stairs. My lungs burned, my muscles screamed, but the monolith was humming in my brain. I reached Clara's room just as the first architect enforcer was rounding the corner. I didn't have a gun, but I had a high-intensity strobe flare I'd taken from the bunker. I kicked it. The hallway exploded in blinding white light. In the confusion, I grabbed Clara, who was already disconnected from her machines, clutching the physical files to her chest, and dragged her toward the roof access. "Elena, you came!" Clara whispered, her breath hitching. "We're Sterling sisters, Clara. We don't do standard exits." We burst onto the roof. The wind was howling, a cold Atlantic gale that felt like it was trying to blow the truth right out of our hands. A black helicopter was hovering 100 yards away, its spotlight searching the helipad like a mechanical eye. "Give us the files, Elena," a voice boomed over a megaphone from the roof's edge. It was the lead architect, a man who looked like any other bureaucrat, except for the cold vacuum in his eyes. "You want the exposed names, but without the physical contracts, you have no evidence that will hold up in a court of law. Hand them over, and we'll let the ambulance take Clara to a real facility. Refuse, and this roof becomes your final headline." I looked at Clara. She was pale, dying, but her eyes were fixed on me. She knew the choice. "If I give them the files, Marcus, can you still broadcast the digital backup Cyrus sent?" "No," Marcus replied, his voice heavy with grief. "The architects used a global electromagnetic pulse on the Adirondack region. Cyrus's burst was intercepted. The digital copies are corrupted. The physical papers in Clara's hands, they are the only original copies left in existence." This was it, the final audit. If I kept the files and fought, Clara would die right here, and the world would never see the proof. If I gave them the files, my sister might live, but the architects would continue to rule from the shadows, their crimes erased by the very fire they started. "Elena," Clara grabbed my hand. Her grip was surprisingly strong. "Don't translate for them. Don't negotiate. Use the monolith." I looked at the helicopter, then at the man in the suit. I realized what the monolith actually was. It wasn't a building, a website, or a server. It was the act of being an unmovable obstacle in the way of a lie. I pulled out my satellite phone, the one with the direct-to-orbit link that Cyrus had boosted with his final breath. "You want the files?" I shouted over the wind. "Here's your standard version." I didn't hand them over. I didn't run. I held the papers up to the phone's high-resolution scanner and initiated a global raw data dump. "Elena, stop!" the architect screamed. "If you release those unencrypted, the global markets will collapse. The energy grid, the banking systems, everything tied to our protocols will fail. You'll start a dark age." "Then we'll learn to read by the light of the fire," I yelled back. I pressed send. The helicopter's spotlight flickered. The digital world below us began to stutter. In that moment, every lie, every forged contract, and every hidden debt was laid bare. It wasn't a clean process. It was a digital apocalypse, but it was true. The enforcers lunged forward, but they were too late. The data was in the wind. The satellite phone beeped. Transmission complete. The lead architect fell to his knees, not because of a wound, but because his entire reality, his power, his standard, had just been deleted.
Suddenly, the roof door burst open. Not more enforcers. It was Marcus, Sarah, and a group of independent journalists I had trained years ago. They were holding cameras, not guns. "We're live, Elena!" Sarah shouted. "The whole world is watching the roof. The architects have nowhere to hide." I sat down on the cold concrete, pulling Clara's head into my lap. The helicopter turned and fled into the dark, its masters realizing that a secret known by everyone is no longer a secret, it's a prison. "We did it, Elena," Clara whispered, her breath eyes. "The audit is finished." "Yes, Clara, the frequency is clear." Epilogue: The Unfiltered Future. 6 months later, the Sterling Group is no more. My father is serving a life sentence in a Hague-controlled facility. Clara, she didn't survive the mercury decay, but she died in a world that knew her name was more than just a brand. She died as a witness, not a puppet. I stand in front of a small glass-fronted building in the heart of the city. There are no logos, no monolith signs, just a simple bronze plaque, the Sterling Archive, open to the public. I am no longer a CEO. I am a librarian of the truth. We don't write headlines anymore. We just provide the documents and let the world do its own auditing. The standard has been replaced by something much more difficult, but much more honest: responsibility. Marcus walks up to me, handing me a tablet. "Elena, we have a new lead. A startup in Singapore is claiming to have a perfect AI for social harmony. It looks like the architects are rebranding." I smile, a cold, sharp light in my eyes. Then I guess it's time for a new audit. "Marcus, warm up the servers. The monolith is going back to work." My name is Elena Sterling. I was disowned, hunted, and burned, but I am still here. Because a lie can travel halfway around the world before the truth can get its boots on. But once the truth starts walking, it never stops.